Oh boy, doesn't a suicide mission just sound like loads of fun? I guess not, what with the whole probably dying thing. But it is, as a game anyway. Also, this video will probably have some spoilers from Mass Effect 1. Go figure. I'm iwontuseanumber, and today, we're looking at Mass Effect 2.
We don't need any reinforcements. I'll take care of it. It's under control. I'll go down there myself.
Turn around very slowly.
Damn it.
Tell me where the assassin is and I might let you live.
If I knew that, I wouldn't be wasting my time talking to you. You're not one of Nasana's mercs. Who are you?
You got two ways down, express or coach. Your choice.
Look, pal. Even if I knew where he was, I wouldn't tell you.
Not the answer I was looking for.
I've got nothing more to say to you. If you shoot me, my team's right through.
How about goodbye?
As the game opens, the Normandy, your ship from the first game, is out on a mission looking for remnants of the Geth forces from the first game's finale. An unknown ship of mysterious origin arrives and blows your ship to shit. While helping others escape, Commander Make-Up-Your-Own First-Name Shepard is knocked into space and dies. Well, shit, hell of a start that, unless you didn't play the first one, in which case you're probably just confused. Cut to some very science-y and technological things happening to Shepard's body, with a voiceover mentioning the Lazarus Project. You're then given an opportunity to re-customize your Shepard should you like, and choose whatever class you want. Yes, you can change that too. Same classes as in the first game, I'll talk more on that a bit later. Shepard soon awakes alive and well, with a few scars and quite a few more questions in a space station under attack. After fighting your way through the game's tutorial section, you'll have found out that an organization known as Cerberus recovered Shepard's body and dumped billions of credits and about 2 years of work into getting Shepard back into the field. Now, if you did certain side missions in the first game, you'll know that Cerberus is shady as hell, and that you probably shouldn't trust them, at least not entirely. Most people in the galaxy regard them as a xenophobic terrorist organization. Their leader, the Elusive Man, simply claims that they look out for human interests because no one else in the galaxy does. And in pursuit of those interests, they resurrected Shepard. I'm saying she, my Shepard's female, and I'm tired of saying Shepard all the time, damn it. She is a hero and icon to humanity, the first human Spectre, and the savior of the Citadel. All things that Cerberus believes to be of value or use. And they have reason to think that a string of human colony disappearances may be related to the Reaper, sentient ships that have the capacity and desire to wipe out organic life, threat, which is, of course, relevant to Shepard's goals, given the events of the first game and her vision of the horrors long past she received on Eden Prime. She's tasked with investigating the recently silent colony of Freedom's Progress, where it's discovered that a mysterious race known as the Collectors is responsible for the abductions. The Collectors are rumored to reside on the other side of the Omega-4 relay, a mass relay that no non-collector ship has ever returned from passing through. Deciding that this threat is both real and worth stopping, Shepard decides to work with Cerberus. Cheers for tenuous alliances. Say what you will about Cerberus, and there is a lot to say. They treat their allies and assets well. You're given an upgraded version of your old ship, the Normandy SR-2. Yes, oh, it's beautiful. And they even recruited Joker to pilot it and work with you again. Thus, your task becomes to recruit the best the galaxy has to offer to join you on a probably suicidal mission to travel through the Omega-4 relay and eliminate the Collector threat. And once again, this means shooting lots of shit. Mass Effect 2, like its predecessor, is a third-person shooter where you have abilities that you can use in combat, and you level up because it's also an RPG. Crazy, I know. In the first game, the cover system felt so slow that I never used it, and I crouched all the time instead. The sequel fixes this. Taking cover and firing at enemies while you're in that cover feels fast and responsive, which, I mean, should have been the case in the first game, but it's fixed now, so good. Weirdly enough, you can't actually crouch in this one, but I never felt like I needed to, so it's fine. Honestly, everything in combat feels better than before. This comes from a mixture of many things. The sound of your gun firing, the blood flying off of enemies, the recoil of your weapon, the visuals and sounds of your abilities, and a million other details coming together all at once to keep combat engaging from encounter to encounter. And just like the first game, the context of these fights that comes from the story and world makes them even more engaging and enjoyable. The other big change is that all of your powers share one cooldown instead of having individual cooldowns, but they each have different cooldown times. So no more spamming abilities to absolutely wreck the opposition, which was fun, but a little bit busted. Also, guns have ammo now. Well, technically, they have thermal clips that are ejected to remove the heat built up in the firearm, to allow it to continue firing, but like, it's just ammo. Guns used to just overheat if fired too often in the first game. This time it works on an ammo system. It always struck me as this mix of kind of weird and interesting. A clear case of mechanical changes between games having to be explained somehow in universe, and it never feeling quite right as a change. Like, for example, you'd think you'd be able to continue firing a weapon once you were out of thermal clips, at least until it's overheated again. And even then, the weapon should be able to cool down like in the first game, but no. As for what it means for gameplay, it forces you to switch between weapon types every once in a while, so it is a positive change overall in my opinion. But it still sort of rubs me the wrong way. Bah, whatever. The mechanics sort of surrounding the combat have also been improved. There was a massive overhaul to both the leveling system and the equipment system. You still get points each time you level up, but it can cost more than 1 point to improve a power. The first rank of a power that actually unlocks that ability costs 1 point, then the second rank costs 2 points, and so on. Some abilities are locked until points have been put into other abilities. At rank 4, which as you might have guessed costs 4 points, you get to choose between 2 enhanced versions of that ability. For damaging abilities, this is usually making it hit one enemy way harder or increasing its area of effect to hit multiple enemies. Other times you may be choosing between different passive buffs or a stronger effect versus a shorter cooldown time. This added customization lets you shape your ability set to better fit how you want to approach combat. Each class you can pick for Shepard has 5 activatable abilities and 1 passive ability that improves stuff like weapon damage and power recharge time. And each companion starts with 2 activatable abilities and 1 passive ability, and you'll unlock another ability for each of them once you complete that companion's loyalty mission. Shepard can also learn one squad mate's unlocked loyalty ability even when it defies logic, but this gives you even more customization, so whatever. If you played the first game, you may note the lack of weapon upgrades as a level up option. Instead of having all options always available to you, the weapon types you can use are determined by your class. Everything that you can use will be effective immediately, which goes a long way towards making this game immediately enjoyable, because you don't have to level up a bunch of times before your guns actually become fucking accurate like in the first game, which was weird because somehow I don't think an elite space marine would even carry a weapon they weren't trained to actually shoot. It was a weird and annoying thing in the first game, and I'm glad it's no longer a concern. Every class can use heavy pistols, the new submachine gun weapon type, and specialized heavy weapons that deal a ton of damage and are just pretty awesome. Usually a thing you want to save for, like, boss encounters. I was kinda lame and just used a rocket launcher for most of the game because difficulty stuff, but whatever. Beyond the weapon changes, the classes are very similar to how they were in Mass Effect 1. Adepts have biotic powers, which is still basically magic or force powers, but they explain it with science. Engineers have tech powers. They actually are now better at disabling all types of enemies. Soldiers have access to all weapon types. They're the only ones who can use assault rifles from the start, and have ammo type focused abilities. Oh, right. Ammo type abilities are a thing. Guns aren't customizable anymore, but the coolest part of that system from the first game, the ammo types, are now abilities that certain classes and characters have. The classes that are part soldier also have ammo type abilities. Vanguards are a mix of the adept and soldier. It emphasizes close range combat, which means you get to use shotguns. Sentinels have biotic and tech abilities because they're special snowflakes. And infiltrators are a mix of engineer and soldier with an emphasis on long-range combat. You may note that the footage has probably shown me using a sniper rifle. Like, a lot. I played an infiltrator this time, is what I'm trying to say. Which means that the vast majority of my combat encounters involved staying the fuck away from everything and sniping it. If that doesn't sound appealing to you, pick a different class. Also, I played on hardcore, which is the second highest difficulty. I do not recommend it for first-time players this time around. The game is harder than the first one. You might want to try starting on veteran and bumping it down to normal if that's too much for you, which you can do at pretty much any time for no penalty beyond missing out on the achievement for beating the game on veteran. Just like the first game, as long as you're not playing on higher difficulties, don't ask me why I chose to do this to myself, pretty much any class is viable, so just pick whichever one seems coolest to you. Instead of a loot system, you can improve yourself, your squad, and a couple of other things through upgrades acquired either through research or monetary purchase. Stuff like more powerful shields, stronger weapons, and more specific specialized things like the chance for your shields to automatically fill up when they run out. Buying stuff is straightforward. You just throw the requisite credits at the shopkeep, and you get the upgrade. Some shops do gain new inventory after specific main missions though, so it might be a good idea to check back at these stores later. Research takes a bit more work. You can come across technology on missions that prompt a research project. The idea being that maybe this SMG that a mercenary was using that you found had a special modification that you can replicate for your own weapons. A bit arbitrary, but alright. Each research project requires certain minerals to be completed. You can scan and probe planets to acquire resources. I did it once to get this footage, then used console commands so I never had to do it again. It's fucking boring. Not a deal breaker for a game that I consider to be amazing in almost every other regard, but holy fuck. Staring at a planet while hoping you come across the correct amount of whatever fucking resource you need, then having to fly the Normandy to another fucking planet when it doesn't give you what you need is not my definition of fun or engaging. And I don't understand why they added the ability to fly around in the Normandy. Like, it sounds like a good idea, but in practice, all it does is make traveling between places take longer. I have to assume it was to add another aspect to this resource gathering thing, but again, it's not fun. And this aspect doesn't help either. But hey, making decisions is still a strong point, mostly. The core of how conversations work is unchanged. There's still a wheel of dialogue choices, usually with progression on the right side and lore questions for nerds like me on the left side. Upper right choices are for goody two-shoes paragon choices. Lower right choices are for edgy cool guy renegade choices. However, the related charm and intimidate conversation options are no longer tied to the leveling system, at least not as much. Instead, whether or not you can charm or intimidate someone is based on the number of paragon or renegade points you have acquired by making those types of decisions throughout the game. In theory, this is a change I like, but the game increases the requirements to make these checks as you do more in the game, to the point that in New Game Plus, you could have a full Paragon or Renegade bar, but still have the related special conversation option grayed out. This means that even more than in the first game, if you want to have access to these options, and companions can fucking die if you don't, you need to choose from the start whether you're playing a heroic Paragon or a badass Renegade character, and make those related decisions as often as possible. Again, you can make a few exceptions. I mainly made Renegade choices in this playthrough, but chose a few Paragon things and I was fine. Like, you can do a romance, which requires at least a few Paragon choices, but you're actively punished for playing a middle-of-the-road character, or one who regularly alternates between Paragon and Renegade. I think most people would gravitate towards one or the other extreme anyway, but this system is far too strict this time around. I still think that the Paragon and Renegade system is an awesome concept that contextualizes Shepard's character and the extremes they'd have to go to and the extreme things they'd have to do to be who they are, but the strictness of the system left me constantly wondering if I had strayed too far to be able to make the next Intimidate choice that I would come across. It didn't happen to me, but the worry was always there. One of my friends got fucked over in this respect on his first playthrough, and from the way he tells it, it's not a pleasant feeling. Shepard's generalized passive class-based buff skill thing can help alleviate this. It also gives weapon damage and power regen buffs, so it's not just conversation skills, but because of how this system works, I can't help but recommend you dump some points into that as soon as you can, especially if it's your first playthrough. There are some good changes, or rather additions to this system. Due to the whole dying and being resurrected thing, Shepard starts the game with some scars on her face. If you make Paragon choices, those scars start to fade away, whereas Renegade choices make them more pronounced. Also, you get glowing red evil eyes, because shut up, it's cool. They try to explain this in universe, but the explanation is dumb. Doesn't matter, it's cool, and I like it. Mechanically, there's the addition of interrupts. During cutscenes or while someone else is speaking, a Paragon or Renegade symbol will pop up on the screen. Paragon interrupts are relegated to the input used for aiming, Renegade interrupts the input for shooting. I appreciate that, it's accurate to what you usually do. And if you hit the trigger or mouse button, you interrupt what's happening to do a thing. This gives more opportunities for role-playing and cool moments, and feels like a very natural extension to the conversation and choice-making system that already exists. I kind of wish more games would implement something like this. I will note that sometimes not doing one of these counts as an opposite choice. Watching someone die when you could heal them is a Renegade thing to do, for example. Now, as this is a sequel to a game where you got to make decisions, if you still have your save from the first game and play on the same system, you can import that save. It's kind of awesome to see the consequences of your decisions across games, big and small. Maybe a familiar NPC shows up, or, doesn't, because you killed them. Every one of the changes based on decisions from the previous game only did more to suck me into this universe and make me feel like the decisions I was making constantly mattered. Thing that struck me as weird that makes total sense once I actually stopped to think about it, a lot of the codex entries are repeated from the first game word for word. Of course they are, it's the same universe. Most of the repeated ones are in the codex from the start, and that's fine. But I did feel a bit disappointed when I unlocked a new codex entry, only to go look at it and see that it was almost the exact same thing I had read a short while ago in the first game. But only lore-obsessed people like me have to worry about that, I suppose. The primary antagonist group in this game, the Collectors, are in my not-so-professional opinion, the fucking coolest. Everything about how they're presented in the game makes them out to be intimidating and mysterious, and everything you learn about them lives up to that. Their actual appearance threads the line between creepy and cool, and you get quite a few personal reasons to want to end them. But what really cements them as standout antagonists in my mind is a unique mechanic that comes up when you're fighting them. Any collector can be possessed or controlled, or whatever, by an entity known as Harbinger. A possessed collector gains biotic abilities, making it an immediate threat that can emerge from practically anywhere on the battlefield, and it presents a unique challenge. Do you take out this threat first, or do you avoid it and kill all the other collectors so Harbinger can't possess another one of them? Also, while Harbinger is on the field, it taunts you constantly, which I appreciate so much.
If I must tear you apart, Shepard, I will survive.
As much as I love the Collectors, they are only a small portion of the content in this game overall. The main missions, if you will. The focus of the game is on preparing for the suicide mission. What this means is finding the best that the galaxy has to offer, and moreover, making them completely willing to lay down their lives for you and your mission. What this means in-game is that every companion, with the exception of the first two and DLC stuff, has two missions focused on them. One for recruiting them, and one for gaining their loyalty. These are the main missions of the game, and it brings to light why the core concept and goal of this game, of building an elite team willing to die for you, is such a strong concept. It allows for a massive amount of flexibility in the range of content presented, without ever straying from the primary goal of the game. Interesting aspects of this universe that were glazed over or only in the background in the first game can come to the forefront, and it feels entirely natural. And because it's always focused on companions, it does storytelling in my favorite way, at least for RPGs like this one. Show the player the larger world through the companions. Done right, it means you're being connected to the larger setting through these personal, individual characters and their worries, concerns, and struggles. It provides a relatable connection to larger conflicts by making you care about these characters. And it is done right here. It's one of the primary reasons that Mass Effect 2 remains one of my favorite games. All of these recruitment and loyalty missions do this in one way or another, and on top of that, they all provide something unique. Compared to the first game, this one is much more mission-focused. There's virtually no exploration elements, with the exception of a few hub areas that you can walk around in, if that counts. I don't think that this is necessarily a good or bad change, just one that makes the game have a different feel. While I do miss some aspects of exploration in Mass Effect 1, I can't deny that this feels like a much tighter and focused experience, and that's part of what made it more memorable to me overall. Again, that focus is the companions. Make sure you talk to them after missions, by the way. Some loyalty missions will be brought to your attention over time, but others require that you talk to these companions. Figure out what's going on with them and get them to the point where they'll open up to you about these personal things. In addition to making them willing to die for you, gaining a character's loyalty also gives them a new power and optional costumes. So, hey, in-game benefits too. Yay. I can't stress enough how cool it is that all of these varied missions are building towards a single goal, the suicide mission. Now, I'm not going to show any of it, because, it's the end of the game, but this mission is the perfect ending to this game, and is probably tied with Undertale for my favorite ending sequence. A lot of that does have to do with the build-up to the mission, but the mission itself is a spectacular payoff to that build-up, because it's as dangerous as everyone claimed it was going to be. Every single character you have recruited can die on this mission. Hell, if you go in too unprepared, you can die, and then the mission fails. You get a game over. But if you make all the right decisions, both before the mission and during it, everyone can survive. It really makes you feel the consequences of your actions. I'll let you try to figure out how to save everyone. For the most part, it's pretty straightforward if you think about it, but there is one aspect that I feel is somewhat unfair and unpredictable. That's the point of what happens, but it pissed me off when it happened to me way back when this game first came out, so I'll explain it here. There's a point where you get a mission to go get a certain IFF. You'll know what it is when you get there. After you do that mission, you have time to do 2 other missions before you have to go on the suicide mission or face certain consequences, and one other mission opens up after you do the mission to get the IFF. I'm being super vague on purpose. Just to be safe, basically be prepared to go on the suicide mission before you do the IFF mission. And if you want to be incredibly cautious, keep a save before that IFF mission. It's also worth noting that you can keep playing the game after the suicide mission, though anyone who dies there does stay dead, so you can't do missions focused on that character afterward. It's almost like the loyalty missions are something that you're supposed to do to prepare people to go on the suicide mission, as opposed to something you do afterwards, just for kicks. Aside from the main content, there are a couple of side missions. The ones in hub areas usually revolve around decision making. Those are interesting enough and probably worth your time. But the missions out in space that you're usually meant to discover by scanning planets are just okay. They're almost all very straightforward affairs. Go down to planet or board ship and shoot a bunch of guys, then get some experience and other assorted rewards. Those few that break this mold are interesting enough, but the focus of the main game content is one of its strengths, and that's entirely absent here. In comparison to that main content, and even the side content of the first game, these side missions felt lacking. Not terrible, just meh. Also, romance is pretty not great this time. There are more options, numerically, and many of those options are aliens, so that's cool, but just... There are 3 options exclusive to Dude Shepard, Miranda, Tali, and Jack, and 3 options exclusive to Lady Shepard, Jacob, Garrus, and Thane. You may note that these are all straight romance options. There's still no gay option for a Dude Shepard in this game. There's a bisexual, non-companion female romance option in Kelly Chambers, your yeoman. She can be romanced by either Shepard, but her romance has less content than all of the other ones. She has less characterization than the others, on account of her not being a companion, so that does make sense, but completing her romance does not give the achievement you're supposed to get for completing a romance. Now, I don't give a fuck about achievements, but what the hell? And once again, I'll say that unless you have a character-specific reason beyond because they're straight, or sexuality is addressed as a topic in some way in-game, something that is somewhat hard to do without stepping on somebody's toes somehow, everyone should be an option for both genders. I cannot think of a single aspect of characterization or backstory that would have to be changed for every single one of the romance options in this game to be bisexual. And because of that, I think they should be. Player choice is important. In Tali's case, it's especially weird because there are numerous things in-game that indicate that she has a romantic interest in Shepard, whether that Shepard is male or female. Another weird thing, I did air quotes on that weird, I hope you could hear it, is that only 2 of the options have actual sex scenes, Miranda and Jack. Everyone else simply gets a fade to black that implies sex. Only options for Dude Shepard have sex scenes. Also, those sex scenes are terrible. The characters are still wearing clothes, and it looks like they're just, like, dry humping each other. So maybe the fade to black is a blessing on the other ones. My point is that if you're going to do sex scenes, do them for all of the romantic options. And having quality ones doesn't hurt instead of upstairs outsideys. For fuck's sake, only one of the romanceable guys does so much as take off his shirt before the fade to black. This disparity is ridiculous and transparent. Also, you can to some extent continue romances from the first game, should you choose to do so. Now, onto the DLC, of which there is quite a bit. Genesis is an interactive comic that summarizes the events of the first game and allows you to make the major choices from that game. It's cool as an option for those people who don't want to play the first one for whatever reason, but I was never that person, so it didn't matter to me. Next is a remnant of the online pass system. Yes, for a single-player game. Gross. The Cerberus Network. It was day 1 DLC that included a few things. A new companion, for one, Zaid. This meant a new loyalty mission, which was cool, but no recruitment mission, and instead of conversations once he is recruited, he just tells you stories from his many years of being a merc. I do like those stories, but he probably should have had real conversations instead, where those stories could come up, you know, by talking to him. Overall, like the Zaid stuff. There's the Firewalker missions, which I like less. You get a space tank and a couple of levels to do in it. They're okay, much in the same way that the base game's side missions are okay. Nothing really substantial here. And finally, it comes with the Normandy crash site, where you somberly explore the, well, crash site of the Normandy. Apt name, if nothing else. It's a cool experience for those of us who played the first game, but it is ultimately just an area to walk around in. Also, it comes with some weapons and armor. The value of those, I think, is based on how many playthroughs of the game you'll do long term. It can provide some more variety and options in combat, but there's quite a bit in the base game already. Same goes for the weapon and armor packs independent of the Cerberus Network pack. There are 2 cosmetic packs that give new costumes to companions. The value of these will vary on a case-by-case basis. If that kind of thing is important to you, look the costumes in the pack up before buying them and decide if you'll use them, because if you don't, they're worthless. There's another downloadable companion, Kasumi. Expect the same amount of content as from Zaid. A new companion, no recruitment mission, a loyalty mission, one of my favorites actually, and stories instead of conversations. I really love Kasumi, and because of that and the loyalty mission, it's a heist that's so different and cool, and just, I recommend this one. Overlord covers a Cerberus VI experiment gone wrong. There's some cool story stuff that happens. It's a well-written piece of content. There's more of that space tank combat like from Firewalker. Ironically enough, I think those sections in Overlord are better than in the DLC that's entirely focused on the space tank, but these bits are still just okay. If you arbitrarily want to skip one of the pieces of DLC, I guess I'd say skip this one. Not because it's bad, but because all of the other bits of DLC with actual content are better, in my opinion. I still like it though. Lair of the Shadow Broker is my favorite piece of DLC in the Mass Effect franchise. You get to fight alongside Liara again, the missions involved are engaging, interesting, and exciting, and there's some other fun stuff involved after you finish it. Heavily recommend picking it up. Arrival is a piece of DLC meant to be a sort of prequel to the events of Mass Effect 3. Someone has supposedly found proof that the Reapers are arriving, and you go to investigate. It kind of feels like it takes place after the suicide mission, but whatever. It's also a very engaging piece of content the whole way through. Recommend it. As an odd side note, in some ways the next game punishes you for not playing Arrival, which is fucked up, even if it is justifiable in universe. Overall, Mass Effect 2 is my favorite entry in the franchise. It's not a flawless game, but the problems it does have are all parts of relatively minor aspects of the game, many of which are skippable in one way or another. The core experience is one that I found so overwhelmingly awesome that I can't help but recommend this game. That said, this has been iwontuseanumber. If you like this video, you can subscribe and maybe share it with your friends. If you're willing and able, please consider supporting me through Patreon. Keep loving what you love, and I'll see you next time with something else.